Good morning, Gators. Just a couple of news items today, everyone. One concerns the way in which we track attendance. This week, we switched to using Infinite Campus to send out emails to students to check in on them and use that methodology as a way of taking attendance, so to speak. The problem is that we've run up against Infinite Campus's capacity limits. There are just too many emails being generated and sent every second that the system's being overwhelmed on a daily basis. Prior to switching to this method, I had asked our teachers to just create a one-question Google form assignment to send all of their students in each class once per week. This meant that first period would get one of those attendance assignments on Monday, second period would get one on Tuesday, and so on. So we may have to migrate back to that system as our way of taking your attendance and checking in on you. I'm going to be in a meeting later this morning and propose a different solution. So stay tuned, as what I've just told you may change next week. I did have a question yesterday about when are we starting school or when are we starting online school. Some schools have used Zoom for virtual class meetings, etc. The reality is that we've already begun. Some teachers have used Zoom to do exactly that and hold virtual discussions, etc. Others have sent out links to Khan Academy or Actively Learning. It all depends on the teacher, the subject, etc. The reality is that all of these delivery systems have weaknesses, and teachers are trying to find the ones that work for them and the largest number of their students. If you aren't getting regular communication from your teacher in terms of instruction or assignments, please reach out to that teacher directly via email. They're the best source of information in that regard. Some good and bad news on the trip refund issue. I attended a virtual meeting yesterday with other principals from our feeder alignments, and the information we were given was that some companies that were originally denying refunds have relented a little bit, and some money is beginning to come back to the schools. Also, our district's budget and finance office is working on some communication for us to use in talking with these companies. Apparently, they've had some success with that approach. So that's the good news. The bad news is that Green Valley still hasn't had much movement with our vendors. The vendors in Spain are still not back in their offices, so we're hearing really nothing from them. The biggest vendor that we're dealing with for Choir is not returning calls, or at least not mine. And so we're probably going to step things up a bit in our approach to that set of circumstances. And the same will probably be true for the orchestra trip. Hopefully we'll see some movement early next week on all those trips with regard to getting some money back. That's about it for the news side of things. Moving on to kind of the regular message. So this is day 10 of quarantine, and you may not realize it, but you've been operating in a high alert mode for a couple of weeks now. At first you had to deal with the anxiety of wondering whether or not school was going to get closed. Then you had to deal with the shock when the news hit that we were going to be closing for a few weeks. Then you had to deal with the realization that you were probably going to lose your senior season of athletics, or a lot of it anyway, or your spring concert, or your speech and debate championship event, and so many other opportunities. Then you had to adapt to learning remotely and figuring out what Khan Academy or Zoom is and how that works. Some students had to deal with finding access to the internet or finding a device to do all this stuff. And layered on top of that, there's the uncertainty that some students had thrust upon them when a parent or both of them were laid off. What I'm trying to say here is that you've been through a lot in the last 2 weeks. We all have. If you feel a bit tired today, that's to be expected. I think everyone feels that way, and that's okay. That's normal when you're dealing with so many new challenges on a constant basis. I know one of the challenges that I'm dealing with, and I'll bet many of you are as well, is the lack of skin on my hands from all the washing. I don't think my hands could get any more red, dry, or cracked than they are right now. I feel like I dipped them in a nice big vat of gasoline and then dried them with a flamethrower. The point here is that we've all dealt with this insane level of daily adjustments that won't go away and that can't be ignored. We just have to cope with whatever the day's newest challenge is in a way that works for us and our families. If you haven't seen the movie The Martian, starring Matt Damon, I highly recommend it. And Apollo 13, starring Tom Hanks, is another one that I'd say a similar thing about. I don't want to give the plots away, but I think both of these movies are good stand-ins for how we all feel right now. It just seems like we can't catch a break. However, we know that this is temporary and that when faced with new challenges, if we just step back, take a deep breath, resist the urge to make rash decisions in a moment of frustration, and then just work the problem, eventually we'll be okay. That's why math is such a vital skill to learn, even if you never have any intention of being an engineer or a scientist. Math teaches you focus. It teaches you to break a problem down into its separate, equally important steps, and it teaches you logical problem solving. So if you're facing more than the normal amount of adversity right now, and Lord knows I have no idea what a normal amount of adversity is at the moment, just remember, solve one step of the problem at a time, then go on to the next one, and so on. Eventually you'll find the solution, and then you can move on to the next challenge. And remember, we got this. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.